Denise, why don't you get us started?
All right, guys, so you've heard a few of them have the ability to speak and share some of their thoughts. Now we thought we'd get this amazing panel together. The thought behind this is really diversity of thought. We have these unique perspectives, so we want to hear each and every one of them, hear their viewpoints, and kind of take some broad topics and then drill down and get a little bit more linear. So, to the panel, first of all, I want to ask you guys, who here is yay and who is nay on cryptocurrency or Bitcoin?
Yay.
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 Knew that one was coming.
Yay.
Yay.
I mean, I'll split it down the middle.
Okay, 50-50.
Yeah, I'm clearly an A, so.
Okay. Okay, so to the panel of naysayers, we're going to take any good college debate. You should be able to argue both sides, right? So to our naysayer, why could Bitcoin succeed?
I guess I should, okay.
You're it, you're the naysayer.
So, let me give you one possibility that I don't believe in, but still, if governments proved me wrong and we started to have hyperinflations breaking out all over the place, then a lot of the argument I just made would go away. But I think more fundamentally, Bitcoin succeeding could just mean that it retains a lot of value, and if in fact it can take on the role that $100 bills and gold play in the current economy, that's enough. If it totally takes over those things, that means that it's actually undervalued now. I don't think that's going to happen, but you can tell the story. And there are some people who share my view that it's never going to take on the role of a means of payment. It's never going to replace ordinary money as a medium of exchange, but think that Bitcoin, although most of them said only Bitcoin among cryptocurrencies, will retain value because it will be basically the preferred means of payment for drugs and assassinations and tipping elections and that sort of thing.
What I'd say about that is that the technological limitations of Bitcoin are real. The slow transaction speed, the problems in closing transactions and writing blocks that sometimes takes 20 minutes or more, that makes it unusable in a modern global economy. But that doesn't mean that, my companies base a lot of our technology using XRP, which will do 2,000 to 4,000 transactions a second.
Right.
That suddenly makes things possible. So I think that the store value argument and the functionality of our argument, we're so early, in such early days. There's so much store value conversation. As an investor, when I was a money manager, I just don't like store value investments. I think buying gold, I realize people have done it for centuries, but it seems like a really stupid investment to me. You only buy it with the notion that someone's going to, greater fool theory. And I think that cryptocurrencies, if their only function is store value, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense that there are that many fools around, although certainly there are a lot of fools around. But I think that when and if there is a proven functionality around moving value digitally, and I think we're doing that at Ripple. We've moved over $1 billion across borders. We've got 100 banks that are actively using our software and to move value across borders in a very inefficient global banking system. Then you've got a solution, you've got something that will create intrinsic value, as will other developers on the platform.
So you and I had an interesting conversation. I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to add, and I think both your comments make a lot of sense, but I think Coinmetrics just published something really interesting yesterday, that Bitcoin settled transactions on-chain exceeded physically delivered gold for the first time.
I'm sorry, what's right?
So there's more on-chain Bitcoin used for settlement than gold used for physical settlements across all gold exchanges. So in a strange way, it looks like the market has already started to treat Bitcoin as a store value.
I would just say that gold is hopeless as a means of settlement, and Bitcoin is not hopeless. It's just clunky.
Less hopeless?
Yeah, less hopeless. And so I'm not sure that's a terrific. That's kind of not a huge threshold. On the other hand, gold has 5,000 years of validation, which is hard to overcome.
Well, you and I had an interesting conversation when we were prepping for this, and you had shared with me, it's not that you're a huge naysayer, you just haven't heard the compelling argument of what question is this fundamentally answering.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to say. There's we have a system which solves the problem. How do I know that this green piece of paper with a dead president or this set of ones and zeros is actually worth something? It's actually worth what it says it's worth. We have a system that basically deals with that by repeated gains. We have institutions that have reputations and which honor, which you can normally trust because they have a reputation to uphold. That's a system that works pretty well. And the whole point of cryptocurrency is to find a way to not rely on it. You don't have to rely on anybody being trustworthy, although in fact in practice you do. But which is a fairly, it's a difficult fix. Why? Has the reputation-based system actually failed? And most of us don't think it has. I think it's actually working pretty well.
I don't think that's the whole argument about the existence of a digital asset isn't just that it's Bitcoin and more, but not that it's replacing fiat. Certainly, that's some people get really excited about. There's a lot of conversations about it, and a very loud conversation. But I think the notion of value being digital is something that, we live in an era where I can send a text message to a friend in Rome in 10 seconds with emojis and a GIF attached to it. Or I can send an email with an Excel spreadsheet to Cape Town in seconds. But we can't transfer value, we can't transfer money in less than, the World Bank says it costs 531 basis points to move money across borders. The average time is 2 to 5 days. That's ridiculous in the technological era we live in. But the problems with settlement, the problems with converting fiat currency, the problems with the global banking system that makes that slow and onerous in technology that dates the 1970s can be fixed with digital technologies, and that's something my company is certainly focused on, as are others.
So, can I just say, lots of people, most of them half my age, but lots of people, or less than half my age, are constantly making constant transfers of funds using nothing but their mobile phones. So we actually have, the trans-border stuff is a peculiar thing, which has to do with jurisdictions and currencies and so on, but it's not as if we don't actually have digital transfers of
Well, power with Venmo and Zelle. But those are lovely front ends. But the back end settlement still takes days.
But does anyone care? The person who pays with Venmo doesn't care what's going on in the back end. It's cheap, it's efficient.
Hey, gentlemen, if I may, not to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry.
1 second.
To extend on the question, please.
Yeah. Lily, I really want to bring you into this conversation. So you have a very unique perspective to this panel with your position as special agent to the DOJ and the cybercrimes unit. So can you share a little bit about just how you perceive this through your lens?
Well, from my perspective in law enforcement, as well as blockchain analysis and forensics, I would say that Bitcoin has already succeeded in the most popular use case, or I wouldn't say popular, but the most obvious use case, which is criminal activity. That's kind of how it started. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. The majority of Bitcoin use is, pretty much stupid price speculation. There's nothing really to it. Nobody's really using it to transfer value unless you're, a techie libertarian or something. But in terms of actual use case, there is a subset of society, of our society, that finds it useful and has found it useful for 5 years or 5 or 6 years. In terms of why, there is a perceived anonymity associated with Bitcoin. I would disagree with that, obviously, based on what I do. Is one of my main, tasks is to de-anonymize cryptocurrency users. Also convenience. I'm able to sell any type of illicit goods on the dark web, take cryptocurrency. I don't have to go out on the street and deal with street gangs or anything like that. I can just do it out of the comfort of my own home. It's very convenient for me in that regard. Also transfer of value across borders. I can be a drug dealer in the Netherlands selling to somebody in the United States and taking Bitcoin, and it can be an extremely profitable operation for me as a drug dealer or any other kind of criminal. So obviously there are issues such as volatility, liquidity, and things like that when trying to cash out the proceeds from criminal activity in Bitcoin. But in general, I would say, I would say also the technology is, I guess it's a learning curve. So not every criminal can learn the technology or even want to learn the technology to be able to use it and not be, detected by law enforcement, because that requires a special type of technical knowledge. So in my eyes, Bitcoin has become successful in that regard. In terms of what people are calling it, a store of value or the transfer value, I don't think it's ideal, but it could get there with Lightning Network or RSK or whatever it is. But at this point, from my perspective, criminal activity is the best use case at this point for Bitcoin.
Thank you, Lily. So I think this is interesting. We started the panel with a yay. I want to turn to this side and ask the same question. So we got to hear some criminality behind this, some of the pitfalls. So with the yays, I'd love to hear just some of the potential hurdles, some of the potential disasters that this would bring.
First, I wanted to address what you had asked earlier. Is it the first question that you asked, the yaysayers? But I do think that Bitcoin is, what was the question? Sorry. Why will Bitcoin succeed? I think that it's already succeeded, and that's obvious to everyone here now. And I think that it will continue to succeed because it was a genius invention, and it's something that I use. And if I'm using it, to me, it's succeeded. It's not based on what others think. If it's valuable to me and useful to me, that's what's important. And I think that's something we teach people from a young age. Don't listen to what others are saying. If it's something you like, then you like it. And if it's something you use, then you use it. I run an international company, and I have employees all around the world. And at the end of every month, it's a lot easier for me to pay all of them in Bitcoin, whether they're in the US or in Europe or wherever they are in the world. I use Bitcoin not for criminal activities, but for everyday things. I mean, I've booked flights with it, I've booked hotels, I pay employees. I bought my co-working space with crypto. It's a real thing to me.
I want to be able to bring this to you and get to another level and allow you to have a comment. Since we've heard the entire panel thus far, I want you to have a word with where you feel this is, pros and cons.
Well, I think everyone's comments are really what is swirling today in that whole debate. It's interesting because, and I was kind of talking to someone backstage about this, in 1999, when internet was established but still early, and mobile internet was coming on stage, one of the discussions we had at JP Morgan was, hey, because there were no killer apps actually back then. What is a killer app going to be? And someone said, well, if you look at Laserdisc and VHS data, it's going to be because of either sports, gambling, or pornography, right? And strangely, it was actually correct, even though it sounded kind of lame. And I mean, in some ways, in crypto, it makes sense that that subversive side is where it's going to first take off, because mainstream isn't, is cutting off access, but it turns out blockchain works really well. I mean, it's a great way, as Cory said. I mean, XRP is a good way to transfer money and, for difficult currency pairs. And so I think the thing that we see as limitations for crypto today are going to be solved with time. And I think that mainstream usage will surpass dark web usage, and speculation will grow. I mean, today, for every dollar that people spend on GP 20 trillion, we just published stats from the BIS, it is traded 96 times on speculation. That's why they call it Mrs. Nakamoto, right? FX is traded almost all on speculation. So for every dollar you spend, it's traded 96 times as speculation. For every drop of oil burned in a car, it's traded 30 times on an exchange on speculation. Today, it's only 2.5 times for Bitcoin. So there's room for a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned it in one of your articles, Lillian, that speculation is overtaking popular research.
Absolutely, yes.
So guys, let me break this down to a more kind of foundational concept. A lot of the conversation has been about Bitcoin, but really we're talking about a series of technologies. I want to make sure we have a clear segmentation of blockchain is essentially an immutable ledger, right? And really this is where some of Drew's specialty is, both the core ledger as well as options of it. And then we have cryptocurrency as probably the most popular current use case, and then Bitcoin is an instantiation of that use case with which most people are familiar with. Cory, I'd like to start with you, and then I'm going to kind of work down on this one, but help us understand Ripple in a bit more detail, specifically with how you guys have built this type of system and where you see these technologies fitting.
Yeah, my big pet peeve are the morons who cannot distinguish between Ripple, the enterprise software company, and XRP, the digital asset. Many of them are all over online, but I think that, fundamentally, I think we're at a stage where this peculiar thing happened with the creation of initially Bitcoin. And we look at XRP as Bitcoin 2.0, where a lot of the technological limitations of Bitcoin were fixed with XRP, which is why we've based some of our software solutions using XRP and not using Ether, not using Bitcoin, not using sort of other options out there, just because it closes transactions so much more quickly and can confirm transactions so much more efficiently. But I think that we are at a stage in this industry that a lot of comparisons are made to the internet, and I think that a lot of those are really right. And we were around for a lot of that too, so we saw a lot of that happen. And it definitely has a lot of familiarity. But I think the difference is that one of the important differences is in the very early days of the internet, the creators of it were academics, it was government, and the notion was we've got a superior technology, how do we propagate it? We'll make it free. And so the value kind of went up the stack. And value was not in the sort of the basic TCP/IP level. There wasn't a lot of money to be made in DNS or registries, but the hardware sellers, the Ciscos of the world that emerged, sold to telcos. Telcos made a lot of money, but the middleware, the Oracles of the world, and even in the Salesforce, there was a lot of value there. But really, in the application layer, when you got to Facebook, when you got to Amazon, when you get to Google, that's where the money was made. So the creators of the very early Bitcoin, XRP, Ether, they said, no. We're going to help incentivize people to join this by putting a dollar value on every block, a dollar value almost on the nodes of the network. And so then we go to my former employer, CNBC, and you get the great Bill Griffith, you get crazy Jim Cramer, my former colleague. Buy, sell, price charts up to the left. Literally the same graphics package, the same charts. And we look at that and we think, that's not sustainable. That's somehow, all the other charts we've seen on this network, all the other ways we've looked at financial journalism, of which I was a practitioner, those things all blew up. Maybe this is going to blow up. But I think that, when I look at that, I see an adoption curve. I see what we saw with dishwashers or telephone or radio, and that it was a bumpy ride, but eventually these things led to a lot of adoption. Now, this may not continue forever, but I think that by attaching a price to the basic blocks, we get confused in the conversations we've had about things that we know from the past. This is different. But fundamentally, we've got to get to a point where we're not talking about stores of value or speculation, but where there are actual use cases of companies that are trying to solve problems, business problems that are unsolved by prior technologies.
That's great. Thank you.
And to Paul's point too, look, getting money and moving money in the developed world isn't terribly hard. The technological solutions aren't usually a lot better than working with US dollars and euros and yen, but there are other problems that our global financial system have that the current systems haven't fixed, and I think XRP is a better solution, and Ripple's trying to write some software to help do that.
But let me extend on that, and Paul, if I can bring you into the conversation here and extend on the discussion we had backstage. So, you have a very unique ability to take complex economic theory, whether it's new trade theory or where you won your Nobel Prize, and break it down for regular humans, right? Which can be challenging at times. You've had decades of experience doing this. Is your foundational issue with Bitcoin as an algorithmically backed cryptocurrency, or is it with cryptocurrency in general? And then compound question: if we were to have a cryptocurrency that did work, what would be the fundamentals economically of that currency?
Okay. My big question, what problem does this solve, is a cryptocurrency generic. question. That's true of anything. Now, the particular awkwardness of Bitcoin, the high transaction costs, the extremely high resource costs of adding to it, might be, and I'm still trying to grapple, it's with whether there's a sustainable way of avoiding those while retaining blockchain at some level. I have to admit that I have not, I've had people I trust tell me both sides of that. So
The joys of crypto theology.
if you want, if I want a definitive answer, I can find someone who will tell me whatever answer I want is the definitive answer. So so that's a little bit tricky. But I think that so it really is. But the question always is what problem it solves. If it doesn't, and I don't think any of these that there isn't a really deep problem. If it's actually possible to have cryptocurrency that has got lower overhead than the existing monetary system, then fine. But if that happens, we'll end up probably basically becoming part of that system. But that's fine. I mean, so that that's my issue. It's really. But I will say that if there's a better, the distinction between the blockchain as a technique, which I'm still agnostic on. I think a lot of the people here are here because they're invested both emotionally and literally in the value of Bitcoin, in the value and the store of value function. So if you're saying, don't worry about that because blockchain will take over even if Bitcoin goes to zero, I don't think that's going to be a whole lot of comfort to people who are investing in it right now.
Agreed.
I actually don't think a lot of people here are interested in the value of Bitcoin. I think that a lot of people here are interested in adoption of Bitcoin and they want everyone to adopt it because they believe this is the future. That's my opinion and my circle's opinion, and I kind of feel like this isn't a circle.
So to play devil's advocate to that, why is it that people would mass adopt Bitcoin, right? Besides, the criminal activity that I said, that there's actually a benefit to using it, right? As opposed to a regular person who, for example, I wanna use a credit card. If I use a credit card, I'm able to call the credit card company if I didn't like the service that I got.
I can answer that right away because I've been in this position, and once I say it, I'm sure you will realize you too. My husband and I, he's Russian, so we spend a lot of time in Russia. Every time we go there, because Russia's the bad guys, there are a lot of our developers, her credit cards are shut down, and I can only call them during operating hours, and we have a very good credit card. It's only during operating hours, and it's not 24/7, it's supposed to be, but it's not. You're oftentimes sitting there on hold forever. Why? When I can just make a quick transaction with, I don't know, Ripple or whatever currency you want, Bitcoin, Ethereum, you make the transaction that you want without having to worry about these other people telling you what you can do or can't do because they don't like where you are and what you're spending. It's those types of things that I think make people want to adopt it because it's now, for the first time ever, people own the currency. It's us that own it, and it's us that have the power. It's no longer American Express or Wells Fargo. I think those. What did you guys say?
Tom, can I bring this to Raphael? Jessica, thank you. It's great. I don't know what you're doing, but it's working well with the audience.
Great. I don't get any love here.
So Tom, for you've got a long history as kind of being a pragmatic, albeit contrarian analyst and looking at markets. From your perspective, kind of extending on the commentary from everybody here, is it Bitcoin you're truly interested in? Is it crypto? Is it blockchain? What truly is your position and your strong desire to make the suggestions you make?
Yeah. Well, I think the narrative of crypto is difficult for non-crypto to really appreciate, right? Because unless you're steeped in it and really accept it, and especially if you're maybe even curious, it's hard to understand how to look at the space. So to me, we try to make it user-friendly. And I think one of the ways to look at this is it's a generational shift. Technology favors the new entrant, not the incumbent. But the platform consolidation, like, in the internet, we did see it coalesce around, a few platform technology companies, Spain, but they became monopolists. I think in crypto, because crypto time is faster, I think it's easy to now call one of the winners, in this election, which is Bitcoin, because it's been around 9 years. Blockchain's never been hacked. There's never been 51% attack. That's at least that's been sustained. So it has a proven track record that is equivalent to 3 internet generations. And again, in vain, it took less than 6 years for a new entrant to surpass Internet 1.0. It's been 9 years. There's been no challenge to Bitcoin. So I think Bitcoin is essentially the first core holding someone has to have. But without question, there's going to be a very rich ecosystem, whether it's for global settlements or people buying gaming, whether it's reputation protection. I mean, there's as I kind of mentioned last night, I think it's this $5 trillion market that's going to be displaced. Incrementally every decade, more growth is native digital. I was speaking to an economist, so by his best guess, 50% of global growth in the past 10 years was native digital. So that's financial technology. In the next decade, let's just say it goes up to 70%. I'm just throwing this number. That's close to 30 trillion of incremental GDP that will be purely native digital. Why wouldn't it be native digital currencies that are, funding those systems? So, to me, it's just a big shift.